Hello and welcome to the continuation of the Disney Era's Ranked miniseries. I'm setting out to order Walt Disney Animation Studios movies from my least to most favorite separated by eras. So far we've covered the Golden Age, the Wartime Era, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Renaissance Era. So if you missed those, you might want to go check them out first. I'll have the videos linked in the description down below. This is the 6th episode of the series where we'll be covering the next section of movies known as the Post-Renaissance Era. Let's get into it. The Post-Renaissance spans from 1999 to 2008 and includes films 38 to 48 from Walt Disney Animation Studios. You know it's going to be a good era when it doesn't even have its own identifier. It's named as the thing that came after the renowned Renaissance, but it is an appropriate name. Disney was clearly a little lost in trying to figure out what to do next. That's one of the hardest parts about creating something amazing. You're expected to uphold that standard moving forward or else you're a flop. And Walt Disney Animation Studios had the added pressure of other studios like Pixar and DreamWorks making fully computer animated films that were outgrossing their projects by a lot. Disney held on to traditional animation for a while longer, but eventually they had to downsize, reset, and make the jump to CGI. As a result, this era is a little experimental and all over the place. It has some really bad, messy films, but it also has some movies that turned out unexpectedly well. If I could rename this era, I would call it Growing Pains. Not something that's fun to go through, but a necessary process that pays off in the end. This collection of movies is definitely not my favorite, but I think there's something really unique and interesting about them, and so I'm excited to dig in. Now let's start the list. Number 11. Dinosaur has the very special honor of being my least favorite animated Disney movie of all time. Disney really can't do dinosaurs, can they? Dinosaur is an especially unique entry in the canon because while it was the studio's first attempt at using extensive computer animation, the backgrounds are all comprised of live-action footage. I talked about this back in the Wartime Era ranking, but I'm not a fan of live-action being part of movies from Walt Disney Animation Studios. I won't lie though, the ingenuity and ambition here is admirable. As times were changing, Disney knew they needed to start to change with them, so even though I think Dinosaur is bad, it was worth a try. There's nothing particularly deep or nuanced as to why I hate this movie. Even saying hate feels too strong because it doesn't do anything offensive enough to warrant that intense of an emotion, which is exactly what makes it the worst in my books. It's just nothing. When I think of Dinosaur, all I picture is dinosaurs walking around amidst a vast brown color palette. There's nothing engaging or entertaining. The brightest spot of the movie is the meteor crash at the beginning because there's actually a bit of action and color. Plus, the lemurs look so whack that it's unintentionally funny. The animation in Dinosaur was impressive for its time. I acknowledge that, but it aged quite poorly. It does not look good watching it today, so it's not an aspect of this movie that I enjoy. And as for the live action backgrounds, they're mostly drab as hell. The story is about the dinos needing to find a new place to live, so I get why most of the backgrounds are brown and bleak, but that doesn't change the fact that it's not nice to look at. At least there's a little bit of pretty scenery at the beginning and the end. A lot of the scenes take place in the dark as well, and those are just difficult to even see what's going on. The plot, as I mentioned before, primarily consists of dinosaurs walking. I know they're trying to get to the nesting grounds, but this is not it. Journey movies usually aren't my favorite, but they can be well done. Dinosaur just isn't one of those cases. I do sort of like how Aladar becomes friends with the slow granny dinosaurs, and it's sweet how Nira is drawn to his compassion, but there's still not a ton of substance here. The most interesting thing about the villain, Crone, is that he's Nira's brother, but that's still not too much to go off of. He has a huge ego and he's power hungry, and it directly leads to his demise. There is a good message regarding the qualities that make a good leader, depicted through the herd deciding to follow Aladar rather than Crone, but in my opinion, it's nothing groundbreaking. I find Aladar's relationship with Nira to be so underdeveloped. You'd think that with all the nothing going on, they could have found some more time to flesh out their dynamic, but no. So when they get together and have kids at the end, I literally don't care. The best element present in Dinosaur has to be its score composed by James Newton Howard. It's honestly a really good score with strong, impactful themes. By far my highlight of watching the film, but unfortunately, a great score can't change my distaste for the rest of it. I apologize if you enjoy Dinosaur, but I think it's ugly and a chore to watch. I sort of wish I could delete it from the canon. Number 10. Somebody please tell me why an animation studio on the precipice of a make or break scenario for their future decided to rehash a concept from 1940 that didn't even perform well originally. In Fantasia's defense, the main reason it didn't make a profit was because World War II cut off the foreign market. Fantasia 2000 flopped all on its own. It lost millions of dollars at the box office. The post-Renaissance got off to a pretty rough start with this one. If you saw my Golden Age ranking, you'll know I'm not the biggest fan of the Fantasia format. I think it's a cool way to bring artistic imagery to music, but as a viewer, it can be exceedingly boring. Fantasia 2000 includes 8 segments, and while the animation quality is not as strong as the original Fantasia, I do appreciate that the film isn't as long. But that's more of a backhanded compliment than anything else. I'm just gonna spend a quick moment on each segment. First is Symphony No. 5, which is very reminiscent of the 1940 Fantasia. It showcases abstract images with dozens of vibrant colors and shapes. I do find this visually appealing, and it doesn't last for too long. Second is Pines of Rome. This short features tons of flying whales surrounded by icebergs, clouds, and the northern lights. The CGI on the whales looks a little odd, but overall I find this segment to have really strong animation. It can be just stunning. My only complaint here is that it runs a little long. Rhapsody in Blue follows a handful of different people in 1930s New York City as they long for a better life. The animation style here is really striking. It's based on Al Hirschfeld's caricatured style, and I appreciate the distinct and clean look of the designs. The monochromatic backgrounds are reminiscent of 101 Dalmatians. I used to dislike this segment, but it's grown on me. I enjoy a narrative about pursuing passions and finding happiness. Piano Concerto No. 2, Allegro Opus 102, is the next segment, and it's based on The Steadfast Tin Soldier by Hans Christian Andersen. It follows a toy soldier with one leg, a ballerina, and an evil jack-in-the-box. This is my least favorite part of Fantasia 2000. The animation style here is really different, and I'm not a fan of it or the character designs. The story is kind of dumb, and overall this segment just grinds my gears. Up next is the Carnival of the Animals, which features a yo-yoing flamingo who refuses to conform to the dull norms of flamingo culture. This one is short, colorful, and fun. I love the animation style a lot. It's my favorite part of the movie. Now it's The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Where have we seen this before? All I'll say is that it feels extremely lazy and redundant to lift a segment from a previous movie in the canon and just show it again with no alterations. I know this short is the most well known from the original Fantasia, and maybe they were trying to honor that, but if you can't even fill out the runtime with original content, then why even make Fantasia 2000? Pomp and Circumstance tells the well-known biblical tale of Noah's Ark, but what you didn't know is that Donald and Daisy Duck were actually present on the Ark. Unfortunately, they didn't realize each other was on there either. I have a hard time believing they never crossed paths, but I'll let it slide. The animation here is solid. It's clean and well done, but nothing makes it very distinct, and it doesn't leave much of an impression. To close off Fantasia 2000, we have Firebird's Suite. A sprite roams around the forest, accidentally awakens a scary fire spirit that destroys the forest, and then the sprite restores everything at the end. In terms of a Fantasia climax, this pales in comparison to Night on Bald Mountain, but it's decent. I'm not personally a fan of the sprite's design, but there is some impressive animation work on display here. I saw Fantasia 2000 in theaters as a kid, and I will always remember the way this segment scared me so much that I spilled my popcorn. Overall, I don't care for Fantasia 2000. I think it was unnecessary to revisit this concept. Not even all those celebrity cameos could save it. and it ended up hurting the studio. What I will say is that even though I don't always care for the creative choices made, I'm glad that animators got the opportunity to experiment with different mediums and styles in order to branch out. But I can't say I ever craved to watch this movie. Number 9. If you're wondering why Chicken Little isn't dead last on this list, I can explain it pretty easily. Chicken Little may be obnoxious and look terrible, but it's not boring. And as you may have heard me say before on this channel, boring is the worst thing a movie can be for my taste. I'd rather watch Chicken Little than Dinosaur and Fantasia 2000 because it's less painful to get through. I'm not saying it's better than those movies, but since I'd sooner choose to watch Chicken Little over the others, it's ranking 9th. Chicken Little as a movie has a bizarre sense of humor that's oddly intriguing. Between the clip of Raiders of the Lost Ark to the Spice Girls
If you wanna be my lover,
to a gay pig obsessed with Barbra Streisand,
don't make mommy take away your Streisand collection.
Mom, you leave Barbara out of this!
these are all certainly some choices, as well as having adult actors voice the kid characters. Chicken Little was Walt Disney Animation Studios' first stab at an entirely computer animated feature, and you can tell. This thing is rough and weird. I have to wonder if the strange humor was an attempt at somewhat replicating the comedy in a DreamWorks movie like Shrek. It would make sense seeing as DreamWorks was Disney's biggest competition at the time, and the very reason they started making CGI movies. This movie takes the classic story of Chicken Little and combines it with an alien invasion. That's certainly one way to modernize the story. It's a wacky hot mess with crazy characters. Chicken Little is a protagonist who continually gets beat down. He has possibly the worst father ever, but he does have some good friends. Chicken Little, Abby, Runt, and Fish are like a little gang of misfits, and I do have to say I find myself rooting for them. The rest of the town is so nasty, it's really the only option. Foxy Loxy is kind of funny though. Major upgrade on her personality transplant. Most of the character designs are ugly, especially Abby, but she's supposed to be an ugly duckling, so that really can't be a critique, I guess. My favorite character in Chicken Little is Fish Out of Water. He's sort of cute. The soundtrack is something else. It matches the weird, obnoxious tone of the movie, but I can't say I'm a fan of it. I don't like having so many contemporary songs. The score is decent, but I can't say it's very memorable. I don't really know what else to say. I feel like I should hate this movie, but I don't. It's bad, but Disney's transition into full computer animation had to be done, and Chicken Little took that bullet. Chicken Little walked so the rest of the canon could run. And the thing is, moving to computer animation was clearly the right choice, because Chicken Little did well at the box office. The critic reviews were a different story, however. I completely understand why this movie is most people's least favorite of this era, but there's just a quality about it that, dare I say, almost endears itself to me. It's like a car crash you just can't look away from. Number 8. Meet the Robinsons was Disney's second attempt at a fully computer animated feature, and I have to say, they improved a lot from Chicken Little, but looking back on this movie today, it's still not great. The animation quality is better, but it continues to be a product of its time. I do like how bright the movie feels, especially due to the nicely saturated blues and greens of the settings. Todayland is a really cool place, and shout out to Space Mountain. Lewis is a strong lead for this movie because they do a good job of outlining his struggles and desires, and it makes him easy to root for. One of the very base needs for us as humans is connection and family. My favorite character in Meet the Robinsons is Wilbur. He has a sweet design, and it's neat to see him interacting with his father as a kid. The two of them have excellent chemistry. As for the rest of the Robinson family, there are some fun members, but overall there's just too many of them to feel very strongly about any individual. I find it hard to keep track of who's who and the relationship dynamics. Goob turning out to be the villain is a good twist, even if it requires some suspension of disbelief. This is where the twist villain trend you see in a lot of the revival era movies possibly stemmed from. The plot in Meet the Robinsons is okay, as it's mostly character driven but still fun. Where it starts to lose me is all the time travel. It's simple enough to begin with, but towards the end of the movie, I don't know if I'm just too dense for it, but it gets a little difficult to follow. I find myself trying to mentally work out the plot beats rather than focusing on the characters and the main narrative. Regardless of that, the ending is still solid. It's gratifying and touching to see Lewis finally have a place to belong, as well as make things right with Goo. Lewis has an intelligence and a determination that is to be admired, and the best part of the movie is the completion of his arc when he ultimately decides not to see who his mother is. It's a direct result of his newly gained wisdom, peace, and perspective. The music is pretty good in this movie. Danny Elfman's score does an effective job at capturing an exciting futuristic setting, but also heightens the smaller emotional moments in a lovely way. The rest of the soundtrack isn't my favorite, and it's not because the songs aren't good. It has more to do with me not loving this style of modern soundtrack for an animated Disney movie. The post-Renaissance movies aren't traditional musicals like the Renaissance was, and a lot of them just play songs by artists over top of scenes in the movie. This started with Chicken Little and continues here with Meet the Robinsons. The Robinsons soundtrack is less chaotic than Chicken Little's for sure, and there are some good tracks, namely Little Wonders, but I just won't ever be into this contemporary soundtrack style for Walt Disney Animation films. I appreciate the theme woven throughout this movie about growing and moving forward even in the face of failure. It was an idea that Walt himself endorsed, and they even include a quote of his during the end credits, which I find to be a really nice touch. In a way, it's almost like a commentary on the journey of Disney animation. This was a hugely risky and transitional period for the studio, and even if their first attempts at trying new things didn't go amazingly, they were still valuable and necessary steps to continuing to improve and grow in the future. All in all, Meet the Robinsons is a decent movie. I do see several flaws in its execution, but I also see a lot of good. It has a pleasant vibe overall, and it can be a fun time. There may be too much going on at certain points, but it finds its way and closes out with a strong ending. I'll always see this movie in a positive light because of the progress it helped the studio make. Number 7. I have a few issues with Brother Bear when it comes to its plot, but this movie looks so absolutely stunning that I'm willing to look past some of those faults at least partially. I'll be honest, 7th is higher than I expected to rank this, but after revisiting the world of Brother Bear, I'm just so taken by how great it looks. This movie is a showcase of nature's beauty. There's lush green forests and meadows, striking mountain landscapes, glorious displays of northern lights, and highly effective implementations of color schemes and lighting. Brother Bear is atmospheric, immersive, and a highly satisfying experience visually. The character work is strong too. The designs are well done and the execution is clean and crisp. If I was only judging on the look of the movie, it would get an A+. An interesting decision was to have the aspect ratio start out smaller and then widen after Kenai becomes a bear. I can't tell if it's subtle or bold, but it's sort of a clever way of hinting at the way Kenai's perspective is about to be drastically widened. Moving on from the visuals, there is a plot to dig into, and it pales in comparison to the animation. As the film's protagonist, Kenai does have a full character arc. I'm just not sold on some of the plot beats within said arc. It feels like a lot was skimmed over in order to get him from point A to B. Kenai starts off the movie unimpressed with his Bear of Love totem, and then he loses his brother, Sitka, during a dangerous encounter with a bear. After later killing this bear, Sitka's spirit transforms Kenai into a bear. Seeing as Sitka's totem was the Eagle of Guidance, it's safe to say that he thinks Kenai has a valuable lesson to learn. Kenai soon meets the bear cub Koda and agrees to let him tag along on his journey since he doesn't know where his mother is. Kenai starts out by having a real distaste for Koda, but then it progresses into more of a love-hate relationship, and ultimately Kenai and Koda gain a brotherly bond. The big issue comes when Kenai realizes that the bear he killed earlier in the movie was Koda's mother. After Kenai confesses this, Koda runs away, obviously filled with pain and grief. He observes the two moose characters, Rut and Took, having some sort of petty argument. They nearly have a falling out, but end up resolving things and feeling renewed in their bond, which in turn causes Kota to reflect on his relationship with Kenai and inspires him to forgive him, all within just a few minutes of the film's runtime. This is really stupid. It's such unbelievable and poor writing in my opinion. Rut and Took, to this point, were merely comic relief in the form of stereotypically Canadian moose characters. They've been shown to squabble and engage in silly little antics, and then suddenly they're having this argument that seems unnaturally serious, but not serious enough that it can't be resolved with tickling. It's painfully transparent what the writers are trying to do. I wouldn't have as big of a problem if the argument with Rut and Took didn't feel so forced, but even if it didn't, I'd still dislike this plot element because after finding out that your best friend murdered your mother, I don't know, I just feel like it might take a little bit more than this to resolve those feelings. Yes, Kota is young and lonely. I understand the desire to forgive Kenai. I also understand that this is a Disney movie with limited runtime, but I'm not letting it off the hook because it's not like Disney movies have never possessed big emotional stakes and nuance. I don't doubt the strength of Kenai and Kota's bond, but it is harmed by rushing through this crucial part of their story. To Kenai's credit, he does sacrifice himself to save Kota from his brother Denahi, and he does take responsibility for taking Kota's mother away from him when he chooses to remain a bear so he can stay with him. Deciding to give up his humanity also feels rushed, but whatever. Kenai comes to learn a lot and gain a ton of perspective, and this leads him to grow and accept his Bear of Love token. I just wish that more substance went into Kota's decision to forgive Kenai and in turn, Kenai's response to that. As for the music in Brother Bear, we have the familiar returning pair of Phil Collins and Mark Mancina. This is pretty cool, but at the same time, Tarzan only came out 4 years before this. I get Disney wanting to collaborate again with people who previously brought them so much success, but it also feels a little bit too soon. And while the soundtrack in Brother Bear is good, it's definitely not as good as Tarzan's. My favorite tracks in the movie are Look Through My Eyes and Welcome. The score throughout the movie is lovely. There's not any one theme that I find particularly memorable, but I think that Mark Mancina's greatest strength as a composer is his ability to create atmospheric pieces that fit seamlessly into a film, highlighting and elevating both the environment and the mood. Ultimately, Brother Bear is pretty decent. It has stellar animation, good music and characters, and a plot that mostly works, except for its most critical moment. So that's a big knock. The movie focuses more on being cutesy than displaying much nuance. It ties things up with a bow a little too easily for my taste. There's still a lot to appreciate here though. Stepping outside of ourselves and gaining compassion and perspective is always going to be important to our development as human beings. And how special is it to be taught a lesson like that by a couple of bears? Number 6. I wouldn't call myself a Home on the Range apologist, but similarly to The Black Cauldron, I don't think it deserves the absolute thrashing it gets from most Disney fans. This is not a fantastic movie, but it's not really that bad either. Home on the Range is typically seen as the final nail in the coffin for traditional animation at the studio, and while bombing at the box office didn't help matters whatsoever, Disney had already set a plan in motion for the move to computer animated movies a couple years prior to this. They just decided to announce it after Home on the Range flopped. The plot in this movie is quite simple and nothing special, but I think that's appropriate for the Western setting and characters. I always have a soft spot for elderly ladies, so when Pearl's ranch is potentially going to be ripped away from her, I really sympathize with her. The journey the cows go on to secure the ranch for her warms my heart and feels worthwhile for me. The characters themselves are a bit weak, but there are some pretty likable ones in there, including Grace, Mrs. Calloway, and Audrey the chicken, voiced by Estelle Harris. I'm down for anything Estelle Harris does.
When I go online, I'm a 24-year-old named Brittany.
Maggie and Buck are annoying, but it's not too big of a deal. The collection of different personalities all serve to balance things out in the big picture. Alameda Slim is a lame villain, but the yodeling hypnosis is creative and sort of fun. The character Rico brings a lot of those cliche Western qualities that I actually enjoy here, and the mine train scene at the climax is well done and reminds me of Thunder Mountain, so brownie points there.
This here's the wildest ride in the wilderness!
The collection of songs in Home on the Range is decent but forgettable. I'm more interested in the score composed by Alan Menken. This was his first time scoring a movie for the studio since Hercules, and even though it's not on the level of his iconic Renaissance scores, I still think he did a really great job with this. The music is bright, fun, and matches the playful Western setting perfectly. The best part of Home on the Range is far and away the animation. The character designs are solid and executed in a clean and crisp fashion, but the star of the show is the backgrounds. This movie has some of my favorite backgrounds from any Disney movie, and I never hear anyone talk about them. I guess I never hear anyone say anything positive about Home on the Range, so it's not that surprising. But in my opinion, this is an element of the movie that is highly overlooked. The unique stylization brings me back to the earlier days of Disney animation, and the use of texture and color gives the overall look of the film a quaint sort of charm. This animation is so stunning to me that I'll honestly admit it single-handedly raised Home on the Range a couple of spots on my list. What can I say? I'm a sucker for pretty backgrounds. I don't really expect anyone to join me on my mild appreciation for Home on the Range, but I thought I'd throw it a bone. The plot and the humor were too weak to save it, but this is a lovely looking movie that serves up some Western style fun in a lighthearted way. It clearly wasn't what audiences were craving at the time, but that's okay. I don't mind that it exists. Number 5. This is the first movie on my post-Renaissance ranking that I actually consider to be a good movie. I'm still not in love with it, but I certainly recognize its numerous positive qualities and strengths. Space aliens and Hawaii is an unexpected combination, but the movie pulls it off. Lilo & Stitch has a different look than many of the Disney movies of its time because the creators chose to work with watercolor backgrounds. This option was cheaper to make, but it also suits the soft and lush atmosphere of the Hawaiian Islands, so I think it works. It's not my favorite style, but I can get on board with it in this case. Decades prior to this, Disney Animation had used the watercolor technique to save money on films like Dumbo, so it's sort of a cool callback to that. The character designs are both creative and realistic in Lilo & Stitch. Creative in the case of the many different aliens, and realistic in the case of the humans. Taking Nani for instance, if you compare her to several of the leading ladies in past Disney movies, the contrast is quite striking. Nani has proportions that actually resemble a real person, so that's cool to see. Animated characters obviously don't need to look like real people, but in this case, it's refreshing. And Stitch's design is super strong and has since become really iconic in pop culture. The best part about Lilo & Stitch is the story, because not only is it original and innovative, it's heavily character driven and grounded by electric and nuanced relationship dynamics. The two key relationships in the movie are those of Lilo and Nani and Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Nani are often at odds largely because since their parents died, Nani has had to take on a guardian role in Lilo's life. They don't get to just be sisters, and it's really sad to see. I love the way the movie digs into Nani's struggles and really takes the time to relay how much of a burden she's been forced to take on. Nani is underratedly funny.
Conciergerie is my life.
And her protectiveness and compassion for Lilo despite all the difficulties is heartwarming. Her efforts to not only shield Lilo from pain, but to also appeal to her creativity is lovely.
Did you lose your job because of Stitch and me?
Nah, the manager's a vampire, and he wanted me to join his Legion of the Undead.
I knew it.
Nani's friend / love interest David is basically the best guy in the world. He's so supportive and attentive, and I'm really glad that Nani gets that much needed help from him. It can be frustrating to watch Lilo misbehave and make things even harder for Nani, but Lilo is so young and is going through way more than anyone should ever have to go through, let alone at her age, so I think her character is well written. Lilo is such a spunky and odd protagonist. There's no other Disney character like her. Between her strange humor, her obsession with Elvis, and her sensitive heart, she's extremely interesting and intriguing. She finds a kinship with Stitch because they both feel like lonely outcasts, and while they have their ups and downs, they find a true connection. Between Nani, Lilo, and Stitch, the movie does a wonderful job at conveying themes about acceptance, authenticity, and family. The reoccurring motif about how Ohana means family and family means no one gets left behind is touching and beautiful. It's really the lasting legacy of this movie. Sometimes I find the intimate and true-to-life events of the plot to clash with the more outlandish alien side of the story, but as I said before, the movie does pull it off in the end. It's unexpected, so it takes a little getting used to. Jumba and Pleakley are good characters with an entertaining chemistry. Pleakley is pretty funny.
All is well. Please go about your business. I'm okay.
Your head looks swollen.
Actually, she's just ugly.
Gantu is a bit of a bland villain, but he's passable. And Stitch is quite the character. He's almost like the Mickey Mouse of the 21st century for Disney in terms of being a face of the company.
I was singing here.
I mean, no one can really be Mickey, but I'd put Stitch up there close to the ranks of Tinkerbell at least. Much of the time, Stitch's chaotic and destructive tendencies just annoy me.
I'll be in my room. Get your own movie.
I don't like watching him act out and wreck things, but his behavior is all based in his loneliness, so it makes sense. He relates to the story of the ugly duckling, but thanks to Lilo's heart and understanding, he's able to find a place to belong. At the end of the movie, the Grand Councilwoman is genuinely impressed with his improved conduct and capacity for empathy, so she allows him to stay. If not for the strong emotional roots behind the plot in Lilo and Stitch, it may have gone off the rails, but thanks to the strengths of the characters, everything stays fairly well grounded. Alan Silvestri composed a wonderful score for the movie that incorporates Hawaiian music and vocals. The original songs are solid too. Silvestri collaborated with Mark Kiali'i Ho'omalu to write both Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride and He Mele no Lilo, and they're great. And of course, there's a whole slew of Elvis songs to round out the soundtrack. Normally I wouldn't like this, but since it's such a big part of Lilo's personality, that keeps it relevant. My favorite moment in the movie comes when Nani sings Aloha Oi to Lilo. It's such a gorgeous and tender moment, and we finally get to observe a quiet scene displaying the pure love between the sisters. Looking at the movie as a whole, Lilo and Stitch is a special project for Disney Animation. It was a big hit when hits were scarce for the studio, and its originality paired with the strength of its characters and relationships has given it a strong impact with audiences and a lasting longevity. It's not one of my personal favorites, but I recognize all the positives about it and appreciate what this movie achieved. To Lilo and Stitch, I say mahalo. Number 4. A few months ago, this would have ranked lower, but I actually did a trivia episode on Treasure Planet a while back and gained a significant amount of appreciation for it. It's still not a favorite or anything, but I think it's a solid movie. Treasure Planet is a take on the classic novel Treasure Island, but in space. It was a passion project for John Musker and Ron Clements, and although it got put on the back burner for years, I'm happy for them that they finally got to make their dream film. It's a bit ironic because typically I adore the movies that Ron and John direct, but the one they wanted to make the most I'm not as crazy about. There's a lot of great elements at play though, so let's dig in. First off, space is really cool. I love the spin they put on the original story because it makes it feel fresh and exciting. And it was sort of a blessing in disguise that this movie got put off for so long, because the directors have stated that the technology required to bring their true vision to life wouldn't have been available before this. Some of the CGI elements haven't aged the best and stick out a bit, but for the most part I think they still look good. Jim Hawkins is a great protagonist, and I think it was a smart move to age him up. In Treasure Island, Jim is just a kid, but in Treasure Planet, he's a teenager. It allows for a higher level of depth and nuance to be incorporated into his arc. Jim is a character who feels the absence of his father deeply and longs for adventure and glory. It's been his dream since he was a kid to find Treasure Planet, so when he finds himself in the unique opportunity to do so, he's all for it. This brings him into contact with John Silver. When it comes to Jim and Silver, this is the relationship that the movie hinges on. These two go through a lot together in a short time. Jim is wary of Silver at first, but Silver is the first person to truly put stock into Jim and believe in him in a long time, and he starts to view Silver almost like a father figure. Silver's plan all along was to hijack the ship and take Treasure Planet with his crew, which obviously hurts Jim and puts them at odds again, but when things go south after the treasure is discovered, when it comes down to the wire, Silver lets go of his desire for riches and saves Jim's life. Their connection prevails above everything else. I really like this in theory, but I think the execution could have used a little more substance. I love the decision to give Jim and Silver a father-son dynamic, but the runtime is ultimately what hurts their relationship in my opinion. I find their connection to be slightly undercooked, and if they had a bit more time to develop and flesh out their bond, I would buy the ending completely. Most of their development is compressed and expedited into a montage sequence. It makes a lot of sense from Jim's end since he craves that paternal presence, but I would have liked to learn more about Silver's past and why he was so drawn to Jim, so much so that he abandoned his original goals and dreams. It's still good, I just think it had the potential to be great. At the same time, I don't really want the movie to be longer, so I'll just shut up. None of the other characters make much of an impression on me. Dr. Doppler and Captain Amelia are decent, but I'm not overly invested in them. Ben is important to the plot, but mostly annoying. Morph is cute, but not that important. He's basically the parrot stand-in. Something I'm not huge on in Treasure Planet that unfortunately can't be separated out of the story is the pirate crew. They're necessary for the plot, but I don't like any of the characters or their designs. This is just a personal preference really, it's not a flaw. James Newton Howard's score is marvelous for this movie. I feel like a lot of the scores for films in the post-Renaissance don't have particularly memorable themes or motifs, but Treasure Planet most certainly does. I think the movies scored by Howard in this era are all the strongest musically. He did some excellent work. Treasure Planet's score incorporates the classic orchestral style along with Celtic elements. The inclusion of the Scottish fiddle contributes to making the music of Treasure Planet memorable and distinct. There are 2 original songs in the movie as well, the standout of course being I'm Still Here by John Resnick. I've already voiced my displeasure of contemporary tracks playing over scenes in animated Disney movies, but as far as songs like that go, this is probably the best we've ever gotten. I'm Still Here is a fantastic song and it matches Jim's feelings and the mood of the film perfectly. Treasure Planet is an action-packed adventure with spectacular settings, decent characters, and great music. Jim's arc is satisfying and relatable, and despite my gripes with the development of his relationship with Silver, it remains quite endearing, especially at the end when Silver tosses Jim the handful of treasure he managed to snag to rebuild his mother's inn. I don't think this movie is quite as underrated as some people claim it is, but I'm really glad that Ron and John got to see their passion project become a reality. It's not necessarily my taste, and at times it can feel more like a DreamWorks flick than a Disney movie, but it's still a good one. Number 3. Fun, fresh, bright, and original, The Emperor's New Groove was, in my opinion, the first good movie to come from the post-Renaissance. This movie is a breath of fresh air after 2 complete duds. It includes grand set designs, super memorable characters, and a stellar voice cast. Kuzco starts off as possibly the most unlikable protagonist in the entire canon, but he's still appealing to watch since his personality and his antics are entertaining. The arrogant jerk to empathetic hero character arc can be a bit cookie cutter and predictable, but I find that if it's executed well, it can be a really effective story structure. Kuzco reminds me of an even more deplorable version of Lightning McQueen, and if you've watched this video, you'll know how I feel about cars. A simple formula can take you a long way if it's utilized properly, and I believe that's the case with Kuzco and the Emperor's New Groove. Forcing Kuzco to be paired up with the morally upstanding Pacha was the perfect idea. Their personalities foil each other, and their conflict of interest regarding Kuzcotopia causes tension, drama, and drives the plot. Pacha is a lovable character whose concern for his family is endearing, and Kronk and Yzma are fantastic villains, even if Kronk isn't really a villain deep down.
My spinach pasta.
They don't have a looming, frightening presence so much as a bumbling, chaotic quality, but they make the movie a lot of fun. The inclusion of humorous villains reminds me of what Hercules did with Hades to an extent, and it's a nice change occasionally. Plus, Patrick Warburton and Eartha Kitt put in excellent, iconic voice performances. Eartha Kitt alone makes this movie worth your time.
Pull the lever, Kronk. Why do we even have that lever?
The animation is another highlight of the movie. The character designs are overall fun and unique. There are lots of exaggerated features done in a more angular style. The best design is definitely Yzma's. She looks equal parts ridiculous and amazing. Another animation standout is the settings. I'm happy to get an animated Disney movie taking place in South America. We haven't had this since the Three Caballeros. There are beautiful landscapes, elaborate and interesting architecture, and an overall style and color palette that manages to balance being vibrant and fun without crossing over into obnoxious territory. John Debney composed a fittingly energetic score that also has its quieter moments that sound lovely. It's not the most memorable score to me, but it's solid. The original songs here aren't bad, but they aren't my cup of tea. One of the strongest assets of The Emperor's New Groove is its humor. This is by far one of the funniest Disney movies. Some movies from the canon try to be funny and fall flat, particularly in this era, but this one hits the mark. I think the moments where Kuzco breaks the fourth wall to address the audience could have gone wrong, but they pulled them off. It ends up matching the tone of the movie as well as Kuzco's character. The Emperor's New Groove was a step in the right direction for Walt Disney Animation Studios. They created something amusing and modern that audiences have responded well to. It wasn't a big hit in theaters, but it had a huge home video release, and has since garnered tons of love and appreciation. I don't have anything to truly fault this movie for. I think Disney did a fantastic job with it. But as the trend goes with this era, it's just not quite a favorite of mine. I like it more than a lot of other Disney movies that I feel mostly neutral about, and I'm not opposed to rewatching it every now and then. This story of a selfish emperor turned llama ticks pretty much all the boxes, and I can easily see why it has had a lasting legacy. Number 2. I know that my ranking for this era might ruffle a few feathers and potentially displease some people. A lot of these movies are fiercely loved and often regarded as underrated. I understand where they're coming from, but despite growing up during this decade, I've never felt much of a connection to this collection of films, and I don't really know why. It could be that I'm just more into the fairy tale musical style, but whatever the reason, I want to reiterate that it comes down to personal taste at the end of the day. The post-Renaissance has a lot to offer and appeals to many people, just not me so much. I am happy to report though that I genuinely like Atlantis. This movie isn't based on a fairy tale, but rather a well-known legend, and I'm into that. It provides a solid foundation for the movie to expand and explore from. The beginning starts off effectively by showing what happened to Atlantis, and then we cut to present day and meet the protagonist Milo Thatch. Milo is a great lead for this movie. He's timid and likable, but his passion for Atlantis is so strong that it cuts through any personality traits that might otherwise hold him back. It also helps that he has a personal connection to the search for Atlantis through his grandfather. For the most part, I like the crew members that are on the expedition with Milo. The team includes a wide array of personalities, but since there's a lot of them, I don't feel like we get to spend the proper amount of time getting to know any of them. The movie still made sure to give each of them at least one distinct trait, and seeing as they aren't the main focus of the film, it's not that big of a deal. Vinny is my favorite crew member.
Just the office supplies.
The movie does a good job with Kida and with Milo's relationship with her. The expedition team doesn't reach Atlantis until 40 minutes into the runtime, which leaves Milo and Kida with less than an hour to develop their dynamic, but they still pull it off. I do wish these two had a higher quantity of interactions, but the quality of the scenes they do share is quite high. Milo's fiery passion for the city of Atlantis shifts towards helping the actual inhabitants of Atlantis once the crew realizes they exist. And watching Milo and Kida excitedly unlock the secrets of the ancient city is great. They clearly have the same interests and priorities, and so they are able to quickly form a sincere and genuine connection. They remind me a bit of Hercules and Megara, the way Milo is shy and easily flustered around Kida's confidence.
Oh, I swim pretty girl. Pretty good, pretty good. Good, swim good, pretty good.
Rourke's villain twist isn't too shocking, although his level of callousness is sure hard to swallow. The betrayal hurts more from the rest of the team, because while we didn't get to know them super well, I still think most of them were likable. Thankfully they find their consciences in the end and help Milo and Kida save Atlantis.
But nobody got hurt. Well, maybe somebody got hurt, but nobody we knew.
Helga remained a villain, but she can get away with it. She's amazing. It always sends me the way Rourke straight up throws her off the Zeppelin without a second thought.
Bye, bitch!
It's okay, she made sure she brought him down with her. Her pettiness may actually have saved the day for our heroes. I like the plot overall in Atlantis, but sometimes the elements involving the crystals and the Guardians gets a little flimsy. I just feel like I've never gotten that firm of a grasp on the inner workings of Atlantis. Whether they could have been better developed or I'm just slow, I'll never know.
The crystal thrives on the collective emotions of all who came before us.
The crystals thrive off the collective emotions of the people. What does that even mean? Luckily, it doesn't bother me too much. The climax in Atlantis is high stakes, high action, and high emotion. It's really well done, and it leads to a fulfilling ending. It makes sense for Milo to stay in Atlantis. He's never felt like he belonged in his regular life, and the place he's always dreamed about exceeded his expectations. Not to mention, he fell in love. The team promises to keep Atlantis a secret, but I feel oddly emotional when Whitmore is allowed to learn the truth. Watching him receive the pictures, crystal, and message from Milo is heartwarming. The animation in this movie is very strong. The characters are designed with the most sharp and angular appearances we've seen yet from Disney Animation. It does work, and it's nice to see something a bit different, but sometimes I think the style is overly harsh. There's a lot of stunning design work put into the settings and backgrounds here. Taking it all in and appreciating it is probably my favorite part of the viewing experience. I feel amazed and immersed, which I'm guessing is exactly what the creators were going for. Fantastic work. Aside from a forgettable track in the credits, the only music in the movie is the orchestral score, which is another impressive composition by James Newton Howard. There's a solid main theme, and on the whole, the score does an excellent job of inspiring feelings of discovery and astonishment. It honestly does make me feel like I'm stepping into a new world, which is a really cool and important factor in the film overall. This is a movie that largely depends on the creation of a strong atmosphere, and to me, it's successful. Atlantis: The Lost Empire is a movie about adventure and exploring new places, but it makes sure to remind us that it's the people in these places that matter most. Thanks to both Milo and Kida's hearts and their passion, they helped to save a lost city and its inhabitants. Atlantis is a movie that is grand in scale and stakes, but it never loses sight of the heart at its core, the characters that provide its driving force. There's definitely room for improvement, like with some of the plot elements I mentioned earlier, but this is a good movie. It's one of the few post-Renaissance movies that I wouldn't be adverse to queuing up for a movie night, and so it lands here at the second highest spot on my list. Number 1. You know how when a bunch of people start saying something's underrated, it eventually stops being underrated? I feel like that's been the case with a lot of the post-Renaissance movies. The Treasure Planets, The Emperor's New Grooves, the Lilo and Stitches of the canon. They may never receive the level of broad appreciation that the Renaissance or Silver Age movies get, but they have become beloved by a large and vocal group. And that's cool, I'm happy for them. But Bolt is the post-Renaissance movie that I still believe is truly underrated. And not just that, I don't really hear anyone talking about this film in general. The Truman Show knockoff with a dog voiced by John Travolta. It's easily my favorite post-Renaissance film. To sum it up simply, I love Bolt because it's fun and it has heart. The plot is slightly outlandish, but if you're willing to go along with the idea that a dog has been made to believe he has superpowers for the sake of an authentic television performance, you're in for a good time. Bolt's journey towards realizing and accepting his ordinary state is reminiscent of Buzz Lightyear's arc in Pixar's Toy Story. I think this premise makes for endless conflict and amusing situations. A big reason Bolt's plot works is because of the power of the relationships within the story. Most importantly is Bolt and Penny. There are few stronger bonds than that of a kid and their pet, but with these two, everything is heightened due to their unique situation. Bolt genuinely believes Penny is in life-threatening danger and does everything in his power to save her, but he doesn't just do this because he thinks he's a hero. He sincerely loves her, and Penny loves him just as much. We see Bolt be convinced otherwise for a moment, but when it comes down to it, her love is unquestionable. The scene in which Bolt lays down with Penny in the burning film studio is so touching. He can't find a way to save her initially, so he lays down next to her in a melancholy acceptance that's somehow almost peaceful.
You're my good boy. I love you.
I want to give props to Miley Cyrus for her voice acting here. She completely sells the pure emotion behind this moment. And Bolt finding a way for his super bark to still be a super bark, just in a different way, is such a lovely touch at the end of his arc. The other very important relationship is the one between Bolt and Mittens. We spend most of the movie following them, and it's like a buddy road trip, but neither of them wants to be with each other. Bolt thinks Mittens is an agent of the evil Dr. Calico and forces her to be his guide. This is quite unfortunate for Mittens as she's thrust into a bizarre situation she really has nothing to do with, but to her credit, she realizes for the most part what's going on and finds a way to navigate it. She's really intelligent, I'm sure due to having to scrape by all the time on the streets. Mittens' pessimism is well grounded in her past, having been abandoned by her owners, and she serves as an excellent foil to Bolt and his fantasies. Despite not liking each other for the majority of their journey, Bolt and Mittens have a lively chemistry and play off of each other so well. I love observing the shifts both of them undergo thanks to each other. Mittens brings Bolt into reality and teaches him about the simple pleasures of being a dog. This montage in the movie is one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. There's just this pure and simple joy in watching Bolt learn to slow down and enjoy the little moments in life that is both refreshing and comforting to me. And being with Bolt helps Mittens to open up again. She's been hurt in the past, but Bolt teaches her about the importance of love and connection, and Penny is a direct contrast to what Mittens has come to believe all humans are like. Penny adopting both Mittens and Rhino at the end is so sweet. Speaking of Rhino, he's not my favorite, as he can get a bit grating, but he rounds out the dynamic of Bolt and Mittens as well as bringing more humor to the movie, even if it can feel a bit juvenile at times. Bolt was the third fully computer animated movie from the studio, and they improved tremendously with this effort. I think Bolt holds up in terms of animation quality to this day. The humans are really the only part that might look a bit dated. The character designs of Bolt, Mittens, and Rhino are all solid. I really enjoy all the different locations across America we get to see as the characters travel across the country. This right here is one of my favorite shots in a Disney movie. There's nothing that creative going on, as animators went more for realism than a distinct style for the backgrounds, but I don't mind it in this case. The music in Bolt is good. It's nothing that striking, but it's very well suited to the story and the vibe of the film. John Powell composed the score, which is interesting because this is the only movie he's done for Walt Disney Animation Studios. He's scored a lot of other animated movies, but mostly for Disney's competition like DreamWorks. I really like what he did here. There are bright and lively themes, but also smaller, tender moments for the emotional scenes. The music that plays during the scene I mentioned earlier with Bolt and Penny in the studio on fire is extremely effective and moving. There's an original song by Jenny Lewis called Barking at the Moon, and it's pretty harmless. For a contemporary track in a Disney movie, it's fairly unintrusive, and I personally have a fun time with it. There's also a decent song from Cyrus and Travolta in the end credits called I Thought I Lost You. Side note, Bolt has really cute end credits. What really works for me with Bolt is its simplicity. It has a subversive quality that is most present at the beginning of the movie as we're introduced to the story from Bolt's perspective, believing the events playing out are real. I think that was a smart and effective choice, and even though the premise is a tad out there, it's reined in and well grounded in the characters and the relationships. Bolt isn't a phenomenal movie or anything, but it's a very strong outing in an era of Disney animation that at times was a great struggle. With Bolt, I see the studio finally finding its footing amidst a considerably difficult period of changing, learning, and adjusting. It's a sweet and entertaining movie, and for me, it's a pleasure to be along for the ride. May we all remember to slow down from time to time and just appreciate the little things. And that's the list. Thank you so much for joining me on this ranking of Walt Disney's post-Renaissance era. As I've said, it's not my favorite era, but it's unlike any other period in Disney animation, and it's fascinating to dig into this collection of movies. I'm so thankful that Disney found a way to navigate the scary changing times. I wish the jump to CGI hadn't been necessary, but between the choice of CGI Disney movies and no Disney movies, I'll take the computer animated ones any day. I'd love to know your personal ranking for the post-Renaissance era. Leave a comment down below, and if you don't want to rank them all, just let me know which one is your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting like and subscribe, and if you're interested in more Disney rankings, trivia, or video essays, head over to the Trove to check out videos like that. I've also linked playlists in the description down below. Thanks so much for hanging out, and expect the next video in this series soon. The Revival era is up next. It's going to be the last video in this series, which is kind of sad. It's been so great making these videos, but I'm also excited to start doing some other things. Definitely looking forward to it. See you next time.